motion to approve the agenda and meeting minutes.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Great. Okay. Moving right on to public comment. Is there anyone online or in person interested in public comment? Brad's here to listen. Okay, good to see you. Wouldn't be Friday unless we were talking about trash. So, Dane, Christy, what's going on with the bioreactor over there?
It's producing gas.
Okay. Okay.
Settling the wind. Are you ready? Yes. Oh,
Yeah, we're at number 4.
all right. Share my screen here. Christine, just made it. Yes. Yeah, I just did it. So, Solid Waste is here today to talk about the landfill gas to energy request for expressions of interest. And so what I want to talk about today is review of when we went to the board back in November about our landfill gas to energy project and what we were hoping to do. Review the timeline again, and then current landfill gas to energy financials, and then we'll talk about the REOI review, the timeline. So that's the acronym for Request for Expressions of Interest. And then landfill gas to renewable natural gas. We had a Dominion Energy folks on site for our REOI, so we'll talk about the information they provided. And then summarize what responses we got from the REOI, and then key takeaways and next steps. So when we went to the board, we talked about we're currently operating under a power purchase agreement with Duke. That expired in 2021, so we went to the board asking for an extension or a new contract. We did negotiate that. We're operating now under that new PPA. It was a 3-year term, and it will expire in November 2024. And then right now, we want to evaluate other uses of landfill gas, whether that's microgrid or renewable natural gas or virtual pipeline or all the options that are out there. Let's see what we can do with our gas. And then the plan was to return to the board this fall to discuss what we found out. And then again, the review of the timeline, you are here, we're in the evaluate stage, and then we pushed out the installation of new gas wells or in any major capital investments in the generator while we go through this investigation right now. So right now, the landfill gas to energy, you will see the green is the revenues, and expenses are the red. We have tanked in our revenues, but we are still operating within our own expense to revenues ratios. So the PPA in 2021, we enjoyed most of the year under the old PPA, which was favorable pricing. And then now you can see on the new PPA where our revenues are now. So we've started running lean and mean and really putting off any major maintenance items or investments in the gas facility while we're in this evaluation stage. So that's why everything's kind of come down and equaled out while we analyze what we're going to do in the future. The good news is we're operating still within the money we're making, so that's fantastic. Okay, so the timeline review, we did put the REOI out in May, We did ask for a mandatory on-site meeting for all of the folks that wanted to respond so they could come on site, see what we've got, give us, a decent opinion of what their options were. Okay, so we did the on-site meeting, and at that on-site meeting, Dominion Energy folks actually showed up. So we were provided an addendum to the REOI to provide the group all the information that Dominion provided, which was very helpful. A lot of ourselves included and potential responders were very curious where the nearest pipeline is, if we wanted to put pipeline quality gas in the line, and then what the standards would be. So we'll talk about that a little bit further down. And then the deadline was June 29th to submit. So we have been evaluating those, and then we actually in August went back and asked all of our respondents to give us their opinion on EPA's renewable fuel standard rule, where there were E-RINs, which is a very lucrative potential for us to make revenues down the road. And we want to know if that impacted their responses to us. So all of that is what we're about to talk about. So just real briefly, landfill gas to renewable natural gas is RNG. And a lot of our projects are based on the flow of landfill gas. So that's a standard cubic feet per minute is an SCFM rating where you kind of gauge the amount of gas you've got in the landfill. So on average, our RNG developers have a 3,000 standard cubic feet per minute, anywhere in projects ranging from 1,100 to 7,700 flow. Right now, we operate right at about 500. So we kind of knew we were low in the RNG world, but we still wanted to see what options were out there. And then the Dominion Energy folks provided some additional information on the nearest pipeline, which was 7 miles away, $2 to $3 million per mile to build the pipeline, and then provided specs for what their requirements are if you want to put gas in their pipeline. So just running the pipeline is $14 to $21 million investment. Okay, so then the REOI responses, we did get 6 responses, and I'm gonna just go through them here briefly. They're all developers, so they're interested in owning and operating our gas, so they would have gas rights to our facility, and they would essentially own and operate the system. Everybody wanted that except for PyroGreen, which was actually a supplier, not a developer. So they supply RNG stuff. And so Amoresco responded. They liked our current landfill gas to energy project. One of their proposals was to buy it out and make new and invest in new wells. They weren't really thrilled about the RNG because of the investment. But they all provided options for both, essentially, landfill gas to energy or landfill gas to RNG. And then here's another summary of essentially what each developer proposed. And really the takeaways were they all had similar timelines, 18 months to get a project online, all developers, and then royalty payments offered to us from what they make off of our gas.
Sorry, and Christy, in all these, maybe the last slide might be best, but in all those examples, except maybe the first one, for RNG, is it all like a virtual pipeline, or what are we talking about in those examples?
So none of them really provided which way they go. For the most part, most developers said, we're too small. We could look at it a little bit further, but your flows aren't there.
We don't have enough volume. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, like Amoresco's takeaway to us was we encourage the county to wait for the EPA to issue its upcoming rules on E-RINs before pursuing any further on the project, so we know where the E-RIN market is. And you're right, I'm gonna get to all that good stuff here.
Maybe one other just fundamental, our output would just go down over time. That's just the fundamental nature of this.
Eventually, yes, but actually right now, one of the things on our timeline was to install new landfill gas wells. When we do that, we would expand our flows. We could potentially double our flows, but we don't know yet. we do know we want to invest in our gas wells in the future for compliance purposes or for beneficial use. Really just depends how the financials look.
And so that's kind of the conversation is like, our current investment is running out of energy, but we have more landfill to go, and so how are we gonna do this? That's the anchoring
And
question.
it's a direct correlation with waste in place as far as the volume of gas that you're gonna generate. So naturally, as we continue to fill the landfill, more waste, and the curve is, you know, long-term, 30 years is what they look at for
But we
good
aren't
methane
there
being
yet, we're just at, okay,
lower flow right now.
It's essentially a bell curve and we're still kind of climbing the bell curve.
okay.
It starts going down once you quit placing waste, so we still got a little ways to go.
Do we have an end of life range for the landfill
We do, it's
What year
20
is
to
that?
25 years still is our
from now?
capacity.
And that's just the permitted area.
So 2050.
And
Well,
so
permitted,
Depending on
yeah.
population growth.
Yeah,
But it-
25, something.
But just the key point is that's just the currently permitted areas.
But we still own land that we could expand on site without possibly theoretically.
They're at the current landfill.
Correct.
It's about, what, 600 acre tract
Yeah.
the county owns there. I think the landfill footprint's around 100, 150.
Oh, wow.
But, you know, some areas, the groundwater's an issue, rock's an issue, that takes a lot of evaluation, subsurface, hydrogeological. So there's a lot that goes into understanding if it's worth to develop landfill space on that property.
And so we don't have that assessment yet to where we know, or do we have some inkling of what other areas could likely be permitted?
We are taking those steps right now.
We are, we're talking through that with our engineering firm, and that's something Christie and SCS are talking through. We've got some spaces that we think could be really good fits. There could be some infrastructure modification to capture that space, but you look at the benefits of the use now would probably outweigh it if it makes sense. So we'll be taking a look at that.
We certainly plan to explore some options sooner than later. And then another response was Northern Biogas. They did a nice job analyzing our system for us, and their takeaway was prudent for the county to delay a final decision on their landfill gas to energy to await the EPA's ruling in early 2024. SB was a microgrid developer, so they provided some information on what they would do. They essentially they don't even need the interconnect with Duke. They would make their own modular microgrids for data centers, and then they market that. So their really niche is getting in with landfills before they have, PPA or interconnect, so that they can use the gas on these microgrids before tapping into the power lines.
I don't get that, wait,
They ship the gas off site to use in a.
Or is it
No,
like?
they actually have a data center on site, right?
So they would resource to have co-location on site.
Right for that.
That's interesting.
It's, what do they call it, back of the meeting, so it's before you get it.
right, and there's precedents that permitting would be fine having co-location. Like, I just assume we're not gonna develop on the landfill, that's kind of hard to do, but this is saying that they think that would happen.
So they would, of course, they didn't provide any details. This was really an informal proposal. So that is their business. They're in the microgrid business. So that is what they responded with. Like I said, it's perfect for landfills that may not have the interconnection. A lot of their niche is getting in and helping landfills make money off the gas while they wait for the interconnect. And then they have these data centers that may or may not be the size of a shipping container. That's about their smallest. And it would be one modular data center that they would sell to data users, and then they tap into the grid and make.
Yeah, pirates, let's do it.
So you're using the gas for energy, they're not using the gas to make electricity. Are they using the gas directly as fuel, or are they using the gas to generate electricity, which is then used in this microgrid?
They make their own electricity in these little modular units while they await the interconnect. So they provided, a timeline and a 15% royalty share, and eRINs was no impact on their response to us. And then Vision RNG they didn't really like any options as far as RNG goes. So that was kind of the takeaway. They didn't like the virtual pipeline or the direct pipeline, not economical at this time as well. And they are an RNG company. They would not do the landfill gas to energy scenario. So key takeaways, majority of the responses were favorable towards, were not favorable towards renewable natural gas. Again, some takeaways from the developers. 50% of the responses suggested the county should wait for 2024 to see what EPA is going to do with the E-RINs. And all respondents except one were developers, which is, a big deal for us. We currently own and operate and handle all of our own gas. We have our gas rights. So if we have issues with odors or we have a well that broke, we can handle it ourselves. We don't have somebody telling us how to run the gas system. And then Dominion Energy again provided the cost estimates for pipeline, which again, pipeline investment was 14 to 21 million investment. RNG technology is in the same ballpark, 10 to 15 million. So you're at $25 million for an RNG project.
So, Christy, I guess three questions, if I can remember all of them. I guess, can you give us an example of what kind of change might occur with the E-RINs in the future? What are we talking about?
So the E-RINs are tied to EPA's renewable fuel standard, and it's similar as carbon credits. So we have environmental attributes by destroying methane. And we are in the carbon market currently. We are registered with the Climate Action Reserve. That's one of our revenue sources for our current project. So we sell carbon credits now for destroying greenhouse gases. E-RINs are similar in that it's generating electricity, and an electric car can go plug in. Now you can get E-RINs. And E-RINs are an emerging market, so there's not really a regulatory way to track it and confirm and verify your credits. Right now we have third parties verifying carbon credits for us. So it's a market that's out there, it's coming, everybody's confident. I think they just need to formulate how they're going to regulate this new emerging market. Potentially we could, if we're not going down the road with the developer, we have the potential to make $1 million a year on E-RINs with the system we have now without making expansions or investments. So that's really, next step in my mind is, continue operating our facility, monetizing our carbon credits and the little bit of electricity revenue we get, and then engage with Duke again. They don't let me talk to them until a year before the expiration. So November of 2023, I can start asking if we even have an option to continue putting electricity on their grid. If that goes away, then all bets are off, right? We're going to start from scratch again. So I'm hopeful that we can continue with that. And then if we do want to interview any of these developers, or we think we want to go down the developer path, we can certainly do that in the meantime. And then await EPA's update on E-RINs in early 2024. So my hope would be engage Duke. We can still do, interconnection, tap into the E-RIN market, and really keep the rights of our gas to ourselves, plan for our future expansions, and make more gas where it's economically feasible for us to do so.
Okay, question, I just want to make sure. So with that, and you're saying the potential, if we went the path that you just suggested, you're saying then we have the potential to be bringing in $1 million a year?
That's the potential, depending on how they write the market up and the rules and how we would all, tap into that cash. That would be.
And what is the investment in our infrastructure going to need to be there in order to do that? Because there's some investment in that.
There is. So depending on what the E-RINs come back at, if it has that potential of $1 million a year, then we have the ability to make decisions fiscally for maybe we want to invest in the generator we have now and do the large capital. We just go out for bid and get a bigger generator. We do know we want to expand our gas wells. That's something we're always going to invest in. So that would help us make that investment. And if you have a contract where you're going to get E-RINs at a potential $1 million a year for 5 years, then what you've got coming in so you can start investing in the well field. Now, the well field, I think, was $500,000-ish, was it?
Yeah, they will combine this over a million.
So, we're looking at a substantial investment expanding our gas system. You don't put as much investment in your gas system if it's for regulatory compliance versus, making electricity and making revenues on that side. So I think that would really drive our decision on how much money we'd spend on the gas system if we were able to get the E-RINs.
And so with the E-RINs, how long would we be able to recoup that potential income?
I don't see it going away.
As long as you're generating electricity.
It's a new marketplace that the EPA is creating. So it's just think of it as an additional revenue stream to our existing project. We wouldn't change the nature of what we're doing if we wait for the E-RIN market. It's just another revenue stream, just like the carbon credits. So we keep the existing program, and like Christy said, we would invest in maintenance or, new wells or, but we wouldn't change the nature of that system.
Whereas this, whatever acronym, RFEIOJ,
REOI?
was to consider if to change the nature of it, what would that look like if the developers came in? So, and they're like, even if you wanted to hang out with us, I'd wait for the E-RIN market because their proposals would be dependent on that. So really, if we wait and change our mind that we want to develop a relationship, we could.
Correct. Yeah, if we wanted to
But
do
I don't
an
hear
RFP.
strong interest in that in general, like we need to wait for this marketplace to like steady the ship, keep doing business as usual until we know about the new revenue opportunity and then assess from there.
Yes.
Very reasonable.
I am curious to know more about the microgrid though, what we're talking about.
Okay.
It is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, unless you all have other ideas. So, yeah.
I would love to hear a response to investment to the email that was like, do you do anything that doesn't involve crypto and money laundering?
Right.
If you build a microgrid here for another purpose, we're interested in talking to you.
Right.
Or a data center for a different purpose. I mean, that is kind of a great idea, right? Like, we have all this power we can produce, but people won't pay very much for it. So if there's a way to actually just have some load on site where we can kind of use it directly, then that's great. I don't think there'd be, like, the crypto mining things, we already kind of expressed skepticism that we want that in Buckingham County. Although if you were going to put somewhere, the landfill would probably be like, So, but if there was some, there's all kinds of data centers, right? I mean, to huge growth of like the nation's electrical load, so there might be somebody else who would want to do a data project there and get super cheap power. I mean, they're just huge energy hogs, right? So we could, I don't know, I mean, it's an interesting idea.
And like, we're gonna need to figure out microgrids sometime. The public sector is gonna need to figure that out for like civilization to thrive. And so getting in early and kind of figuring out what that looks like and having that type of resource in the county.
Yeah.
I don't know, that we can learn as a community from it.
Yeah, that was part of the objective, was we've heard throughout the years, the vendor or developer would send us a schematic of a cartoon, like, we want to do this at your place. So it's an opportunity for us to say, this is our place, this is the flow we have, what ideas can you bring to us? And it wasn't just tunnel vision, like it's gotta be RNG or, electricity like we're generating now. Christy, Jeremiah, the group have talked about, what are the possibilities of battery charging? That, Mike and I have talked about maybe some needs out of the link. So we were trying to chase some rabbits in different directions to see, just generating ideas.
The key takeaway to investing is they're a developer, so they're not interested in, if we want to bring in so-and-so to do, no. They're gonna build their thing and they sell it to their customers and it's theirs, so.
And we would also forego the E-RIN marketplace.
You would not be an E-RIN market.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be, if we did ask more questions, we would want to compare with that in mind, if you're gonna use
Yes.
that potential revenue.
And they were offering a 15% royalty share, which is.
Yeah.
Tell us how it feels.
Which was not my favorite. But that essentially is what we got back. I will say we're not surprised. This is sort of what we expected. Pipelines are a long ways away. We're small in the RNG world. I was hoping to have, something magnificent show up, but we're really not surprised. This is what we expected. And I would love to wait to see what the E-RIN market looks like so we can kind of keep driving the ship ourselves when it comes to the beneficial use of landfill gas.
And you're expecting to know about the E-RIN
We hope, I mean, everybody's speculating, but early 2024 is what, all the developers said, I'm hoping.
You're bringing us a new revenue stream for garbage. That's pretty magnificent to me in the future. So that's pretty cool.
That would be great.
But would you like us to follow up with some questions to Betsy?
I'd be interested in hearing their pitch.
And the part of the question is your client only crypto mining, or are there other data center clients that you have? Because if it is crypto mining, we're probably not interested, but if you have other data center clients, it actually seems like a great concept.
And I hear your challenge with them specifically,
And
they're
we would want to
developer.
negotiate.
I'm
Right,
not looking for that.
right. But they're the only one with the microgrid or concept
Correct, they
for this
responded.
that responded.
In their idea though, it is just literally like one container size?
Well,
That's
They
the
can
footprint of it?
upsize, so it really depends on how much gas you're producing, right? And how much they can make a data modular for data centers. They can expand from one shipping container to acres of data center. Our struggle at our site will be, we just don't have any flat acres
Well,
to,
that was kind of my question, is
Yeah.
like, if you were gonna put something there, like a little data center, like what is the footprint of what actually could be accommodated on site? Do we have an idea of where that would go and like what the allowable footprint of it would be consistent with all the landfill operations we have going on?
I spoke with them recently at a conference, and the smallest footprint was basically a shipping container. Because that was my question, is, how small can you start? And I think the shipping container size, like the Comex box size, I think that was their smallest footprint.
But that, just intuitively, that would seem like way too small to actually use the electrical output we'd be producing. So like, if you're trying to match up, the load with what's produced, then what size project do they need?
Right.
So,
And we can certainly engage with
Yeah,
them,
that's a good question.
see what that looks like.
the one other thought, like just in terms of like how to use the energy on site, and this, this may be something that maybe kind of a few years down the road sort of thing would be, you go out to the landfill, and there's just like lines of cars and trucks, right? And so, if we think 5 or 10 years in the future, and then a high percentage of the vehicles are electric vehicles, especially these big vehicles that are transporting stuff around and use a ton of power. The idea of setting up a fast charging station there, maybe with a battery, charge that, and then just, kind of have like a solid waste fleet running off EVs, and we've kind of in essence like free power or super cheap power or something to do that. But there's probably not the case for doing that right now, because the percentage of vehicles is not gonna be enough, but that might look really different in
In the
3
future.
years, right? So
Yeah.
Good.
Well, and we have one now, we're charging our van with our electric charge station now, and if that's essentially where we want to think about going, your best bet is to engage Duke, keep making the electricity, get that little bit of revenue, you're able to tie into that e-rent market, because now you're plugging cars into your battery charger. So you're able to get it all and charge our fleet on site.
Yeah.
Maybe one day we can fuel the city of Asheville buses one day or something.
We can sail the scenic drive. It's pretty. It's
Yeah.
It's a drive.
Yes.
And then bought the landfill downtown, didn't they?
Sure.
Well, yeah, the vehicle, part of the challenge is it is kind of out there, right? So it wouldn't kind of make sense to send vehicles out there to get electrically charged, like,
Right.
but if there's so many cars just coming through it organically that, kind of as that gets electrified, just using it,
It's
that
unreal.
seems like a natural fit.
The way the trucks are routed on their GPS system, they come down Panther Branch a lot. So there is a lot of vehicles, Tennessee, that are moving through those corridors, but golly, it's a nightmare when they're coming through because the tight roads, but
Yes.
they do route a lot of vehicles through there.
Speaking of this reminds me, when I went out to the community session for our future Pisgah View State Park, guess what was brought up to me by the community members? Convenience site.
Really?
No way.
Yes. Yes, I was out there chatting to people and they're like advocating for a convenience site. I said, well, there have been many discussions and I will let Dave know that there are more people who do want that.
Where was that at?
It was out at, Hominy, the fire station
Okay,
out there.
right there off of 151.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
very good.
Yeah.
For
I thought you'd appreciate that.
Thanks, Christie. Were you done?
That's it, yeah.
Okay, great. Did we give you the feedback?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
We'll follow up, probably with an email, and maybe she can share the proposal that Betsy.
Yeah, that was good information, thank you.
Now Jennifer with this grant program again, French Broad Clean Water Fund?
Clean Water Fund.
The Clean Water Fund.
Yes, so,
Humboldt County,
oops.
pick a name.
Let's start with acronyms.
Yeah, work our way back.
Essentially, we received 2 applications, which I did share with y'all earlier in the week. One of the applications from Asheville Greenworks proposed 3 trash trouts. However, only one of the trash trouts was in a watershed that had a watershed management plan, which rendered the other 2 ineligible. And then the second, and that was for roughly $50,000.
Or if you had done.
If all 3,
All
yeah,
three,
so the application was for $50,000. And the second application we received was from Riverlink to do a project at AV Tech's campus, and there's kind of 3 projects that are going on there. By their account, Project 1 and Project 3 have funding, and this is kind of a missing middle, Project 2. And so they were asking for roughly $50,000 as well to do this missing middle piece. And Sybil, I don't know if you want to say anything or do you want me to talk through? Okay, so as you may or may not know, the commissioner said this, currently the county pays for all the projects at AV Tech. And so there does, what we've learned is that there's about $900,000 in stormwater money for AV Tech. And we're trying to understand exactly how that's being utilized. We've been working with Ronnie on Mike's team. So there's potentially money to do that project as well. So that kind of left us with an opportunity to find other projects. And what we did was I had reached out to a lot of my contacts and said, hey, why didn't we get applications? Or even, hey, I need applications from you. And the feedback I got was timeline's too short. We don't have time to pull it together. We have the town of Black Mountain.
Timeline to apply or timeline
Yeah,
to
timeline to apply. Black Mountain was in the process, they didn't get in time. So we know there's projects out there, they just couldn't pull it together in such a short amount of time. So what we're proposing is perhaps to open it back up with a longer timeline. What we've been told is 2 to 3 months really to get the funding sources together, projects, everything. So this is a revised timeline, if you will. Getting organized and opening it back up by the 1st of November. We'll do the consultations November through January with applications due towards the end of January, January 29th, I believe is in there. We'll review the applications beginning of February. We can bring them to the February 16th meeting for you all to make recommendations on, and then there's a 20th, on February 20th, there's a commissioners meeting. We can take applications there. We can get the project contracting done through February and March. The idea that we could start in April. So that cuts the timeline back if we still have to finish June 2025. So they would have a little over a year to get the project on the ground. Based on the 2 that we saw, that's a reasonable timeline. Based on the other types of projects, if there's permitting involved, that could be tight. I don't know what the appetite would be for an extension if,
extensions in my world happen all the time. We just got another one from Tropical Storm Fred still, trying to get that work done. So, I don't know your thoughts on.
Is there, just what are the pros and cons to the extension? Clearly, a positive would be that it's gonna allow them the time, right, which is probably gonna be a challenge. Is there any con to doing the extension?
So for me, it comes down to budget and how budget likes to work. In terms of the project, timeline means really nothing, but in terms of budget and how they how they don't like carryover, that's really where it goes. Now, I don't know, some of our grant funds, they work on more than 1 year, correct? Or do all of our grants only run?
Well, Rachel's program is annual, so that's kind of what we were modeling ourselves at.
I thought we had already talked about trying to just do this as a multi-year, right, rather than the annual. Like the
The
conservation.
timeline, yeah, because it does take longer to implement.
Because we're gonna run into this every year if we don't.
They're not able to make
Yeah,
that.
I mean, a lot of what Rachel
Yeah.
funds are like nonprofit groups
They're like-
running some program.
Yeah.
We're talking about a lot of things like building something,
Construction,
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
It's a different kind of project.
Right. And I think to that end, should this be funded again in the next budget cycle, we could be ready to go earlier now that we have all the framework in, but I still think when you apply, you need time to apply and then get it on the ground. I still don't think this is a year space to do any of it.
Personally, I think we should give them more time than having that hard deadline, and I think we should look at it being however you, not an annual,
Right.
not like the strategic partnership grants, because I mean, the whole point is we want them to be successful and get this done in a meaningful way.
Have you talked with the city? Does the city have any interest in applying?
I did have some interest from the city.
Yeah.
And then I just didn't get any applications. We had a couple of people reach out that were interested, but their projects were outside of a watershed management plan. So, and I think, honestly, I think the application window was so small that people just saw it and moved on and didn't even reach out to me. I got response back from my colleagues who, when I reached out to them and said, hey, are you applying for this? And they were just like, listen, we're busy, we don't have time to think about it, and the window's so short, I can't fit it in, so.
Sure. But you do feel like with the opening it back up, you've heard that there are some.
Yes, for sure.
And then you said the good work, so and they could still apply for the one, or you have the application.
So I guess that's a question for the group. Would you like them to reapply with a more limited scope? Or would you like to make a funding decision based on the part that's eligible and just essentially cut it into a third? But I'm not sure because because there's admin money in there and whatnot, I don't know if it's right to just cut it in a third or if it would be better to have them reapply.
Probably they should redo their budget with the correct information.
It was perhaps a bit rushed application, and
Good learning though.
Okay, and then the Riverlink one though, that you all feel confident through our AB Tech, through that commission, that's able to be funded? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, it's definitely able to be funded because it's capital. And we think there is that 900,000 that's set aside could cover.
Oh, that's
that.
already set aside?
Yes, and Ronnie, who might manage the shop, is managing that project.
Okay. So
That
why,
comes out of the,
so why were they thinking that they didn't have this funding?
We're going to apply for funding.
Yeah.
or AV Tech property from ideas from their own river land.
They need to redo the application.
Oh, either way,
Yeah.
okay, I'm sorry.
So just out of curiosity, why did they not know that? I mean, they applied for projects that are not in the right watersheds. Is it pretty obvious, like, hey, these are the watersheds where there's plans, so your project must be physically located in these?
Yeah, it was very clear. We put the links to the plans and everything. I think maybe it was just a bit rushed application and they just were like, oh, hey, there's money, let's apply for 3 trash trucks, maybe. They didn't reach out, so I didn't communicate with them prior to, so.
Kind of like, one thinking Maggie shared, I mean, if we think it's a good application, I mean, if your policy, like, we'd be willing to fund you at 1/3, if you can do this for 1/3 the cost, then, seems like proceed, but if,
Yeah, I mean, my thinking was we would forego then potentially funding some other projects that we may get that might be better. So I was thinking it might be nice to have them all
Get
at
them all
once, so we
together.
can kind of
Yeah.
compare with
Sounds
each
good.
other. Yeah,
sounds good.
so, that's fair too.
I think they can tighten up their budget on it.
Yes, yes, I agree.
What a deal.
Yeah, here's your technical assistance feedback. We look forward to your second proposal.
Yes.
So I'm hearing 2 things. One, amending kind of the schedule for the application so that we can extend it, which is good because that will align us better with our existing grant programs. They have a similar schedule to that as well. And then also extending the implementation timeline as needed as we go, since we're talking about capital.
All right,
I
thank
guess
you.
in terms of eligible applicants for projects that were identified in the Central Asheville watershed plan, does that have to come from Riverland? Or can that come from the city or any number of applicants?
Yeah, it can
Okay.
come from
Okay.
anyone.
Okay. Thanks.
Well, anyone that's local government or nonprofit.
Right, nonprofit, right, exactly.
Okay.
I just sent a note to Deborah, hopefully we can have a proposal, we have a big queue of things.
I think there's like a list of like 30 projects in the back of that.
Mhm.
That's, yeah, okay.
Cool. Thanks, Jennifer.
I think pausing here really helps get us better projects.
Great. Okay. Next is Ashley, the grant update. Now, before or after you're done, I'm running out of room in my brain for the names of all these grant programs that are falling out of the federal government right now. So maybe we could talk for a minute about what they're all called and what they do, but go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna try to kick it off that. and I-
Okay,
and I have
that'd be
my-
awesome.
I have my little cheat sheet here too, because it's pretty overwhelming. So main ones I just wanted to give you a quick update about is, the very first one is the electric school buses for Buncombe County Schools. And that one comes under the bipartisan infrastructure law or the bill. That was the $5 billion over 5 years that came out with that law. And I think you remember last year was the first year of that, and Buncombe County Schools did apply for 2 electric school buses. They were not successful. It was very competitive, and I think they had a good application, but they do prioritize low income, disadvantaged areas, which we were not on. They had a real specific list of areas that would be given extra points, and Buncombe County was not on it the way that they had it set up.
Which is a shame, because that Woodland and Emma actually is where they were wanting it, and they should qualify.
Yes, and we did provide feedback on that. Unfortunately, when they came out so last year was a rebate program. This year, they did revise that, and they structured it a little bit differently. And so there's a grant program and there's a rebate program. And there are some additional provisions where you can self-certify or you can submit specific information about the areas where you plan to use the buses, which in Buncombe County Schools case would be Emma and the Woodfin area is where they're looking at near the garage. So I think there's some opportunities. They're making it more flexible. I feel like they've responded to the feedback, and Buncombe County Schools, is definitely interested. They had a ride and drive event. I got to drive a Spirit school bus earlier in the year, and they actually did apply. They have an application in right now for 5 buses. They did that as part of a group application with a vendor, where it would be multiple areas in the state, but Buncombe County was included in that one with 5 buses. And of course, with North Carolina general statutes, buses have to qualify for replacement. And so they had 5 that met that criteria. So waiting to find out about that one. It's going to be announced either, November to January timeframe is when we'll find out who is going to be selected. So still waiting on that. Meanwhile, EPA has a rebate program that is now out, and they are eligible to apply. Even though they did apply for the grant, they're still eligible for the rebate program. So currently doing some outreach with them on that. Not sure yet if they're going to apply for the rebate as well.
How much is the rebate?
I'm sorry.
How much is the rebate?
Oh, good question. I think it depends. The way they structured it, sort of similar to last year, where depending on the area you're in, it would either fully fund it or be partial funding. So I would have to look and see. I think the cost of the buses are, I think it's around 300, 400,000, is that right? Whereas a normal bus is 100,000. So typically the amount would be the difference between the cost of a regular diesel bus and the cost of the battery electric bus. And then of course there's charging infrastructure that comes into play.
Original amount, right? Is that right? The state still pays for
Yes.
whatever the baseline is, and
Yes.
the grant closes the gap.
Correct.
Because the state gives
So
you.
grant or the rebate?
Either one. That's their goal, is
So
to
the
close that
schools are
gap
not out
between.
money.
Right.
Yes.
Well, in fact, that'd be in the money because they don't buy fuel, or they buy fuel at a fraction of the price. I mean, does anybody run an analysis how quickly they would pay for themselves even without any subsidy?
I think they've had a lot of webinars and case studies where they've shown, how much they're saving for things like the maintenance and things of that nature, but I'm not sure how much. I haven't really seen a lot.
I mean, if there's a rebate it's gotta be substantial. Driving buses, they're very, very expensive from a fuel standpoint. So,
Infrastructure required for a bus, though, and they need extra fancy chargers, so upfront capital, what the numbers are is really where's the.
And that's another factor, of course, is charging infrastructure and where the current school bus garage is located in Woodfin. They would need to do some upgrades. And so I know they've been looking at that.
So how often, what percentage of the bus fleet gets replaced typically on an annual basis?
I don't know the percent, but I know that there were between 5 and 10 at the most. And I know that the city of Asheville did not have any that were eligible for replacement over the last couple of years, but
Any of their
Montgomery County.
buses,
Sorry.
any of their city municipal buses?
No,
The
city
schools.
schools.
Okay.
City school buses, yes. So, but Montgomery County had, I think it was between 5 and 8.
Per year,
Um,
or that year?
well, a year ago it was just 2, but this year I think it was around 8.
Yeah.
Is that-
It's just all, I mean, I have not really dug into this at all, like, this is the first time, like, I really, thought about this very much, but it has like it seems like it has the ingredients of like going into sort of like the no-brainer category pretty quickly. And it's probably like among like the lowest hanging fruit. I'm thinking about like EV, like we have these things that run literally the same route every day. I mean, it's about as obvious as like a postal vehicle, where it's like, you know exactly how many miles you need to run, same route, you need a charger, park at another charger, build a charger there. So I'm just expressing like a lot of enthusiasm for this, and if we can get grants and rebates, that's great. But there might be like a very sound case for saying like with the schools, like, hey, we should just be procuring EVs from here on out. And it might make sense even without the rebates. It might make just on a financial basis. We should at least just continuing to buy buses that are internal combustion might not make sense anymore, right?
Don't quote me, but I think that the cost of the EV bus was around $450,000 compared to 100. Maybe the difference is about $350,000.
But then what's the cost to operate it for 10 years, right? It's gotta be a big number, I would think so. At least we should understand that, so.
Let me check into that and see if there's some more information about that, because surely there's people asking the same question, and there's got to be more information.
There's also a company called Highland that I remember listening to a podcast about, that does some sort of leasing program for school buses.
And the schools probably finance their buses too, probably, right?
Yeah.
So they're probably not coming up a lot of money by it.
I think we get the money from DPI.
The state.
Because the state pays for it, they pay the $100,000.
It's not a tax at all.
Right.
We just own the activity buses.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so, so the challenge for the schools would be like, if there is more money, where do we go with that money, right? So maybe there's, maybe there's leasing options, maybe there's some rebate, maybe there's some financing, but it's really one of those where it seems like we should look at the purchases on that life cycle basis, right? Not just that, like, what's the cost to just buy, because the EVs will have such a lower life cycle cost.
So am I right in saying that the fleet facility, that's school administered, all that staff, all of that fuel, all of that work is all paid for by the school systems, but the buses themselves are all paid for by the state?
That's my understanding, so.
It's complicated.
Yeah, but they have to pay for the fuel bill for all that.
We do.
We do, local schools do.
So with the first grant, the way they structured it with us not being a priority area, they weren't offering very much money for upgrades to electrical infrastructure, for the charging infrastructure that was needed. I need to look at this last one to see what they've changed there, but that was another challenge that the school board or whoever we need to come up with that. I think we did look, and Duke has some rebates that would help in making some of those upgrades, and we were in contact with some folks from Duke and working with them and trying to work through it, and they were taking a look at the areas of interest and things of that nature. So just an ongoing process, so it's, we'll keep working on it.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I guess I was like, if there's additional things that we need to do locally to help kind of enable some of that stuff, it does seem like really fertile ground to explore. So like it's like one of these areas where like we're already in the business of funding the schools to run these buses, right? So we're already spending money, and this is just an alternate way to spend money. And in the long run, it might be the same or even less. So and then it's just it's a big footprint, because these are heavy vehicles. So it's.
And it's
Move the charger
already
to
20 years.
the landfill from a microgrid.
You gotta build a school at the lake.
Trash can.
So are you envisioning something similar to like a solar project where, we're paying for the energy bills and so by putting the solar, I mean, is that kind of what's in your
Well,
mind?
right, yeah, I mean, it seems very similar, right? Because it's sort of like, that's where a place where it like, the commission concluded like, hey, it makes sense to spend $10 million to put solar on schools, because we're gonna spend $10 million on energy bills for the schools. So, yeah, I mean, it does have a lot of similarities to that, so,
Maybe we want to see the business case.
yeah, basically, like, what's the business case for like, basically a policy to say,
Yeah.
we're going to EVs on buses, and certainly leverage any grants or rebates we can, but then even aside from that, like if we did that, would that potentially be a really good project to support, as we think about all the different other clean energy projects we could potentially support, how would that one rank? Yeah.
We would get 30% ITC on the chargers we would buy for ourselves.
They own that stuff, so they would. The school.
The school,
Yeah.
okay.
And that's gonna be the other factor is the infrastructure, cost of that, and your installation, yeah. But I'm sure there's already been plenty of life cycle analysis that
Somebody can just ask that stuff.
And they were talking to Duke, because when we met with them, it was last year when we first met with them about this. They were reaching out to Duke and trying to figure out all that, so I know they've done a lot of work on this already.
Yeah, I think it's great that they're interested in pursuing it. On that, and so the other one I wanted to tell you about briefly was the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. There's a lot of EPA funding under that, including one I know is the Clean Energy Fund that Jeremiah is going to talk about here in a minute. But the one that the Air Agency is watching most closely is the CPRG, or Climate Pollution Reduction Grants. And that is a $5 billion grant that we talked about earlier this year, where they were doing plans initially, state and local governments. And we thought our area might be eligible for these planning grants. It turns out it just went to the largest areas like in our state, Charlotte and Raleigh. So they're doing their own climate pollution reduction grants, and then the state is doing one for the whole state that will include smaller areas like us. And then there's a separate grant for the tribe, the Cherokee tribe. So that was the main thing I wanted to let you guys know about, was just that they have kicked off the stakeholder engagement process now. So there will be implementation grants that air agencies and local governments can apply for, but they have to be, anything that you apply for in order to be eligible has to be part of the larger planning grant process first. So the state is doing the planning grant for the whole state that would include us, and now they're reaching out to local governments and others for stakeholder involvement to say, hey, what kind of projects do you envision? What do you want to see us doing with the plans? And so this is the opportunity to submit what we're interested in hopes that it will be included in their plan that's due to EPA in March. And then when the implementation grants are available, we could be eligible to apply for something.
So it's gotta be in the plan so we can apply for it later.
Exactly.
Yeah, basically Charlotte was the only one that got to do their own plan. And the rest of us just have to go with whatever the state plan is.
Okay.
So all of us have been submitting comments pretty regularly. I mean, when I say all of us, I mean all local governments have been pretty dogged in submitting comments to the state energy office for what we believe should be eligible type of project.
So
And Ashley and I just sent a letter off a week ago.
Is Bridget on that too?
Oh, yeah.
Can you provide some details of what you're thinking?
Yes, so I've got the slide up on the screen. This is the state's presentation with, like the deliverables, and I'm just trying to scroll down. The focus is going to be, of course, greenhouse gases from fossil fuel combustion is about half, 35% transportation, 35% electricity. So that's what they're really interested in focusing on. And they had the first webinar yesterday, and they did mention projects like the one Jeremiah and I were talking about is a home heating upgrade project. So it would be part of like the bigger electrification campaign that Buncombe County is working on right now. And the CPRG funds are focused on low income areas. And so the idea for the home heating upgrade pilot that we presented was basically when we're out promoting electrification, going into low income homes and replacing older combustion sources like older oil furnaces, gas, older wood stoves with newer, more efficient heat pumps. So it would go along with like the weatherization and home repair type programs where they're already out in the community getting referrals from there. And then this pot of money would be kind of like the low income piece of the Buncombe County larger electrification campaign, so that the low income folks wouldn't be left out if they don't have, if the rebate doesn't work for them or if the tax credit isn't helping them as much. So when one of our staff members, I don't know if you guys were, there was a webinar yesterday, unfortunately I wasn't able to be there, but they did mention electrification as being a big focus of what they see as being in the plan. So it's really hopeful that something like that could pan out. And Jeremiah, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I think you did a great job. That's it. Like, we're already sort of starting the process of trying to build this electrification marketplace, if you will, right? This campaign. And the one thing that we don't.
The contract that we just gave to each group.
Correct,
What is it
yes.
called?
It will be called Electrify, that's what one from, like, Electrify
I
ADC.
just need to like lock it in, so I don't always go, is
Yeah.
this a thing that I'm
Just
thinking
want
of?"
another acronym, we got it for you, man. So, yeah, so that campaign, and this, I don't wanna,
No,
okay. Just kind of loops into my next updates as well,
Yeah.
so I'll just kind of keep going from here. And that is that, you know, we're in the process of sort of building out this campaign. Again, we've explained it to you guys again, so I won't like start from scratch, but where we're at with it, honestly, is still in that sort of contractor development stage. So we wasn't here last month, so I'm not sure if I got to tell you, but we had a really nice in-person meeting with Western North Carolina, I help acronym, too many acronyms, but this is a heating and plumbing contractor, basically, for the Western region. Had a really good in-person meeting with them to help develop sort of an official sort of RFI to put out there to get contractors feedback on how to design the program, because if they don't like it, it's not gonna fly, right? That RFI is currently out, right? It is on the street today. I can send you guys a link to it if you want to have a look at it. But it's all the questions that you can think of, you know, we're trying to get out there, get contractors feedback on what a program like this would look like and how it can be successful, as well as like what type of financing is available, what you're using, how can you make that better, which will then sort of segue into the contract we've entered into with an energy fund, and sort of where they are. So,
What is the contract with the Sylvie's group, you were saying?
So they're the ones actually doing the electrification campaign development, right? So they're gonna be building the electrification marketplace, they're the ones that are RFI. They're the ones that after we get the RFI done, and sort of have that information from contractors, we'll then do an RFP to actually engage contractors that we hope to work with to do the actual work.
And then they'll be out there running the campaign and basically in the business development funnel for
Yeah, the marketing and
contractors
all
that
that
are
stuff.
selected that then have access to the clean energy fund loans that we're backing up.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So again, a lot of balls in the air, right?
Pretty rad.
It's pretty
Awesome.
It's pretty
And
awesome.
then what you're all saying is like a big priority you're verbalizing to the state is like, make this deal that we're trying to create better. We can funnel anything into heat pumps so that as we're out there campaigning, we have even more resources to keep people in it. 'Cause the existing loans are really gonna be for minimum people who have the capacity to borrow.
That's right. So yes, I could have said it better. That's exactly right. So, you know, the low to middle income folks, even if we provide like really great financing options and we can do lower credit scores, we get all these things, like there's a cap at like who we're gonna reach with a loan product.
Finance, which is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's only gonna work for some people, right? And obviously the idea is to stack as many things as possible.
Here's the whole list.
Exactly. Just cobble it all together to bring down the cost of these technologies as much as humanly possible. there are still folks, doesn't matter, that's not gonna help, right? They're not gonna be able to do these unless we find a way to subsidize these projects. And that's what we're trying to tell the state is that pool of funding to help some of these lower income folks not get left behind is a real priority for us, right? And with the Clean Energy Fund, we are at, essentially where they're at is, you know, now that we're under contract with them, they've engaged a couple of CDFIs. One that I am getting the sense that has the most interest and wants to talk to us is self-help, which is not a huge surprise. And we actually have a meeting with them on Monday, next Monday, to have them sort of grill us, you know, ask us the questions that they have, where they might have concerns, and, you know, sort of lay out our plans and how they can be involved and what our expectations are, you know, for what loan products would look like. And so the wheels are turning on that, with the goal of having, you know, around the first of the year, you know, something to actually present to folks is like, this is the potential loan products that we hope to engage people with. As well as, you know, again, timing that up with potentially having a couple of contractors under contract with us to do the work, right?
Okay.
And then the launch, right? It's get out there, spread the word, tell everybody what's going on. You know, work with all the various community partners who will be involved in this. And
So we still might hit the winter plus when a lot of people are making these
I mean, I'm
purchases.
overly optimistic about timelines all the time, so that is the goal.
So it might be slow to start and then you finish strong later in
Yeah.
the calendar year as people are approaching winter.
I think that's right, and I don't have like super high expectations from the first round of doing 50 or 100 of these things. We're trying to get our people in, we're trying to build this thing, and it's new and it's different, and there's not a lot of folks doing it. We're trying to do it with as much local flavor as possible, right? And we've gotten calls from like national organizations that are like, we can build a marketplace for you, but it's all super high level national contractors and things like that. I want you to Lowe's. It's not. We want our folks to live here and work here, do the work as well. So
Are we still the only city who's like chipped into the state program?
so far. Yeah, there are others that are obviously expressing a lot of interest, but nobody's actually ponied up anything yet. Exception of Buckingham, because that's how we do things. We're out in front. So I'm not sure what else there is to say. Obviously, there's still a lot of balls in the air, a lot of this stuff. But that's kind of where we're at. Maybe you want to- That's kind of where we are right now. Like I said, we have a meeting on Monday with city, county, self-help, and the Bright Spaces, I'm gonna call them solar grounds, or whatever.
Right, space that we're calling up.
Bright Spaces is actually, that's their name, and they do business as solar counselors. So we're just calling it Bright Spaces, we don't want to be confusing with that solar in there anyway.
So the Clean Energy Fund essentially has introduced us to self-help as the bank, the financial institution,
That's right.
and that's the only bank they've introduced us to.
There's a second one, they're a CDFI, they're actually out of Florida, I think, but our preference is probably.
Well, the two directors of the Clean Energy Fund, Melissa has been the director of sustainability at Self-Help like 15 years.
Yeah,
Right.
So
That's what
she knows how to strike a deal with them, which is not surprising and probably best anyway.
There's,
She is, so.
that's exactly, yeah, there's existing relationships there. She's great, she's gonna do a good job with this, I'm really confident, and Jen and also, so, yeah, so
And
that's where we're at with this. I don't know if I covered enough stuff or.
And the Clean Energy Fund's role, though, I'm now wondering what their role is in introducing us
Well, yeah, that's great.
They're brokering the capital.
That's exactly
to.
right.
Okay.
So the first thing that they need to find someone to fund this, and they will sell that relationship with our loan loss reserve.
Right,
Because it's gonna take a while for the federal capital pot to land, but when the federal pot lands, it will land at the Clean Energy Fund. So
Right.
into the future, they're the capital, they're the go-between federal capital, so it'll land into their coffers to then be distributed through relationships with CDFI. And CDFI will like cut the loans, and do the underwriting, and have the relationships, right? But
Right.
they go CDFIs don't capitalize themselves, they go to the banks, and so the clean energy fund will act as the bank.
There is also a role for them to play potentially as a go-between so let's just say you're a contractor, right? You go into someone's home and you say, we can qualify you for a loan product, it's a really good deal, it's through the Clean Energy Fund. You have to take an iPad and fill out some information, right? So that module will be owned and operated by them as well, right? So it can do very quick approvals. That's something we heard from contractors pretty quickly. We started asking questions. We need approvals like this,
Right,
right?
a CDFI isn't gonna be able to develop that technology or that source, so this to be.
So there's existing modules out there that do exactly that. And they also act a little bit as a quality assurance, honestly, too, for like once a contractor is under contract, they do the job. From the time they get that contract done to the time that everything is done and signed off on and permitted, there are steps where the Clean Energy Fund will do verification to make sure everything's going properly, right? And they would have a project manager, theoretically, that, right now it's just in they're looking to hire an additional person to be a project manager to ensure compliance with those steps along the way, right? From contract to permit and operation. So they do have an additional role to play as well. I can't remember the name of it, what was that, Smarty?
Oh, yeah, Smarty.
Smarty is that platform.
It's like the Connecticut Green Bank.
Yeah, they had looked at Smarty originally, I think they're actually kicking around this other one, all about. But that is a piece that they're gonna play as well, because obviously we don't have the staff capacity, yeah. Like they're the contract.
That's what I was getting at with, yeah.
Yeah, so there is a role for them to play in that space as well. Yeah, I think that's it.
Is the vision still to have a little product though that is modular enough, that's the right word, that you don't, as a contractor, you don't need to have a relationship with Sylvie's group to use, but you can just kind of
Yes.
find it in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think long term that's it, right? I think initially, it's pretty small scale. It's like, we're working with these folks, these are a couple of contractors, they're gonna be working with Jen's group. And it's that bubble, right?
Yeah.
I think over,
Into the campaign.
Yeah.
we get that.
yeah, but I think, scale is what we're looking for, right?
Yeah.
Long term, and they wanna use us and what we're doing to, you said, once this greenhouse gas reduction, I'm like, then
Yep, the amount of money is unprecedented
it's crazy.
for lending.
That's $7 billion just for savings. So, basically, let's scale this concept statewide for various technologies. Like we're focused a lot on the heat pumps now.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of where we're at right now. But theoretically, you can use this for solar, you can use it for thermal, you can use it for all kinds of stuff. You can do it wherever. It's just an efficiency upgrade or something.
Last thing, tell me this, when Parker has a crazy idea next year that might necessitate a new loan loss reserve, you're saying the Clean Energy Fund is finally going to capitalize in some way to do their own programming to
Yeah.
pass taxpayers.
That's the goal.
We aren't capitalizing anything, so
Well-
they still might need a loan loss reserve. They need a loan loss reserve until they're capitalized by the federal government.
Right.
Yes. But remember, they showed us models of 3 years of a loan loss reserve, so.
But after that, they
This-
wouldn't need to come to groups like us for this kind of thing. That's that. Okay.
We're like the startup investor.
That's right. Cool stuff.
This is-
Cool. As my brain's going down.
Yeah.
The timeframe for the CPRG grant, the state has to submit that to EPA, their implementation plan, the initial plan by March 1st. And then implementation grants are actually gonna be open up until April the 1st. So it's gonna be pretty tight as far as, submitting anything. Have to stay tuned on that.
Cool. Maybe we can find maybe some money will fall out of that program for upgrading school bus facilities.
There
there are some additional funds in the IRA that are focused on transportation, so they're gonna be focused on specifically battery electric school buses, transit buses, and I think also refuse haulers or trash trucks.
That's so cool. I've been thinking about school buses the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the whole thing.
What did we learn?
Well, part of it applies to any, part of the thing with EVs, like the cost effectiveness depends on like how much you drive the vehicle. Right? Like EVs tend to be very cost effective for vehicles that you drive a ton, right? Because they do cost up more upfront, and then fuel costs are a fraction. So if you live in town and you only drive 5 miles a week, EVs take a million years to pay off, right? You get an e-bike. But so school buses are kind of good, that you do use them a lot, but you know, you actually just kind of run around in the morning and you run around in the afternoon. So some of them actually have pretty short routes. So I think kind of back of the envelope, the place that'll be most attractive are for some of like the rural routes that are quite extensive, right? So I think in any of these decisions, we kind of want to focus on the places where, you know, it's really attractive from a payback period, and probably some school buses will be, and others, you know, that in the city routes, maybe it would be a much longer payback than on some of the outlying areas. Yeah, but the trash trucks run all the time, right? So the stuff like that would probably be even more attractive, relatively speaking. So
How many school buses do you think we have, grand total?
Yeah,
Yellow buses.
250 or so?
250?
Really?
Really?
I think their comfort level in diving into electric school buses is, let's start with the shorter routes that are close to the garage.
no,
And they're concerned about the longer routes that go
exactly the
north.
wrong way to think about it.
Because they're concerned about reliability if they
Well,
have
they're
a problem.
just putting out, they don't wanna get too far from the charging station.
I mean, test
Well,
drive it 2 times to
Well,
figure
the
it out.
other problem though is real that we're having with our city buses is that we're having to turn our buses out of commission because they don't get enough charge, right? So like our buses, when we get a charge, can't be in service full day. So then we're at the cost of having double the amount of vehicles and like that. So there is a real thing there of this balance that ideally they might not have enough charge.
And just so you realize, because we had this conversation with the schools last year, there's some safety reasons with the school, I can't remember all that, but there's a lot to it with why they want to start where they are. Because they have some requirements of having the bus accessible and having it ready to go for emergency if they've got to evacuate students. So there's some other things like that in play as well, that they didn't want to just be worried that it had to be charged. So there's a few things.
I mean,
Yeah, so school bus garage,
imagine figure that out.
if they have to put the infrastructure somewhere, they wanna put some infrastructure at the garage first. So that when they have a bus in and they're working on it and it's sitting there, that they can charge it up and get it back out to where they need to get it to. Well, the Woodfin School is walking distance to the school bus garage, and there's only one bus that serves that school, one bus that sits there, that they could charge it. So they thought, well, let's start with it first and then let's move on to Emma. And apparently they have to have a backup bus in case they had to evacuate.
Couldn't their backup bus be a diesel bus?
Yes,
Right, okay.
they have extra spares around, so there's.
Actually,
The good thing is they're working with us, right?
Yeah.
It's just.
Yeah,
that's very
I guess some things like,
Initially,
you know,
yes.
I mean, the operational stuff should be taken into consideration, but like, you know, the taxpayers should be considered too, right? Like, so like spending things on like cost ineffective applications, cost effective applications, I mean, that should matter too. And you know, just at a high level, I mean, I think that like the 2 biggest opportunities to like move fast on these goals are like electrifying the grid and electrifying fleets, right? Just in general, these are the 2 biggest opportunities. Like a lot of this other stuff is just gonna, yeah, but you know, even that will just take a lot longer, right? Than when you're literally making the decision about like buying new vehicles, right? That's sure that helps.
The Cherokee tribe has electric buses, and they have committed to converting all of theirs to electric, and they had the drag race last year we got to go to. And that was really fun, so if anybody wants to go check out the bus, Cherokee, and, you know.
If they have another race, I wouldn't mind the invite, just to see if I can make it, because that sounds really fun.
It was fun.
So I want to be clear, Ashley, Are the school systems working on this right now, or are they just talking to you in the context of the grant application?
Yes, I think they are working on
Yeah,
it.
they applied last
They
year.
did apply last year and again this year.
But they're not proactively working on electrifying their entire bus fleet, that's my question. You know what I mean?
Probably the policy statements.
There's a difference between applying for a grant application that comes along and
Right.
proactively, actively working.
Regardless of.
Yeah.
Opportunity.
Good question. I need to follow up with them anyway. So I can try to find out more about where they are with that. But for now, I just know that they are interested in applying for the applications.
Jeremiah, you were gonna talk about floating solar, we have through on the agenda to identify where we're at with committee
Want to do
members.
that?
Yeah.
So the last time, yeah, they said last meeting to be on the agenda is because we needed to tinker with the membership and stagger subcommittee members. So we're here again to tinker with some of the subcommittee members' terms. All the initial stagger terms are completed and everybody is currently in their 3-year terms. So the current lay of the land is, and we have commissioners, we have Parker, Browning, and Terry in their 3-year term. They can serve without limited number of terms as long as they're commissioners. So those terms end June 30th, 2024. Meg and Maggie are in their first term. Their terms run from July 23 until June 2026. And we got Lena and Chris, who are serving from July 22 until June of 25. This is all goes to the Board of Commissioners to be approved. So the good news is Chris was appointed by the commissioners and he's serving in his term was stated July 22 till June 25. The bad news is the Board of Commissioners have not formally reappointed Meg, Maggie, or Lee. So we'll do that at the next meeting and the
However,
commission meeting. Except
Meg is not
Meg
interested
is
in reappointing.
rolling off, so Laura knows to put that into the pipe to announce that, and that'll take 30 days or whatever.
And has Lena confirmed that she wants to be reappointed? Do we have a?
I haven't heard her, she was stuck on phone, so that's why she's not here.
That was like January of this year. Yeah, that she confirmed that she wanted to do that. So she's on a different term than, she's heard Chris on these things.
Oh, so it's only me and Meg that will have to be on. Got it. We're good.
And that doesn't.
They do have.
And
Might be a
Lena's
reason.
term.
I think we should talk about it, right?
Michael, I don't think you did. I was trying to find it.
Right.
And I was asking about attendance policies. I'm really grateful for Lena, but I see that sometimes it's hard for her to attend. And so, I don't know, my magic wand Maggie is like, if there was someone in the community that was like, I can't wait to put extra time in, like maybe they'd be a good person to talk to.
Well, the Board of Commissioners policy is 75%.
Okay.
I
Do we
think that's
know
for
our
all our
attendance
boards.
records?
Right.
Okay.
And it started with applications, right? So should we do that, like, what do we do to fill next seat?
Yeah, something we should have.
And then should we consider Lena's?
I'll send an email to the clerk to advertise the.
Yes, because we usually do a 30-day advertisement.
It usually
And-
runs 30 days depending on the number of applications the clerk receives.
Right.
If it gets extended or not.
Yeah, and then the commissioners would do interviews and then make a recommendation, and that recommendation could, if you would, if you let them know that you're interested in continuing, then that could
Maybe I'd suggest we could see the applications and then I'd encourage us to revisit if we're really concerned about our attendance policy or not. If we have some great applications, we're just gonna have that conversation with Lena, like, here's where we're at, we really need support, so if we can dial in more, we'd love to keep you, and if not, we have some other candidates we might.
Well, you have to do that in advance because we advertise
Oh,
whether
for
we have,
multiple positions.
yes, whether we're advertising for one or two.
Maybe I'm being too rigid if y'all are like, this isn't a big deal, I'm here to listen to that, but.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's policy.
Here's one spot.
Yes, it always. Yes, start there.
So-
You can always.
So Lena's position started in June of '22. So she's not up for, we just never had the commissioners reappoint her, but this group put Lena back in June of 22, and she goes till 26.
She had an original appointment by the Board of Commissioners, so she serves until someone comes in to replace the seat.
So if we replaced it, that position would start in June of 22. They would
They're not
fill
doing a
her
full
seat. Right, it wouldn't be a full term,
Unexpired.
right.
Alright, so I feel like I'm hearing advertise one position and others aren't as concerned, and that's fine too.
Yeah, I mean, but if we advertise it, then we'll see who applies. I mean, I'd be happy to check with Lena and be like, hey, are you still
Yeah,
interested in
just
serving?
talk
Just
to
talk to
her.
her and see if she's,
Because
because she's got bandwidth to plug in, you know, if she does, I'd be happy to have her continue, but if she's like, I'm just overstretched, then. Yeah.
I think that's a good idea, because in that way, I'd rather just be interviewing once,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So will you all make a motion then for us to advertise for 30 days?
Oh, yeah. Is there a motion on the board to advertise?
Motion to
slot?
advertise openings for 30 days.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
I
He's muted.
Ayes have it. He's not, the quorum in the room has it, okay.
There you
Okay. We've reached the end of our agenda. Jeremiah, if you have any updates for us on our floating solar projects?
Sure, yeah. So, where do I start? So, we submitted an interconnection application. We heard back within a couple of months that technically our interconnection application was not valid because the site agreement that we entered into with Duke was not a binding agreement. So according to them, letter of the law is the way that did
The lease,
the lease, it has to
the
be.
lack of a lease.
The lack of a lease, yeah, so the way we structured this letter, honestly, we did it with Duke, and so that was one of the frustrating things, is that like, we worked with them and their legal team to draft this letter, and say, you know, yes, it's not binding, but we're gonna be doing this, we wanna submit an action application through this process. But then once we actually submitted the application, the other side of the house, the actual interconnection team said, this is good.
So they didn't care enough to do their due diligence internally.
It's, wouldn't be the first time that one side of the house and the other side of the house, but then you don't talk to each other. So, they told us basically without a,
Never had.
essentially, right, you know how these things go, you guys both work in this industry, it's gotta be a binding legal. Basically, it says we have first right and we can construct this facility, et cetera, right? Well, obviously that means Duke has to give us that, and Monica just got a text from a minute, 5 minutes ago, she wants to talk about it. So I wrote up a proposal, I guess, if you will, to give to them, for them to cycle through their internal conversations around allowing us to get this money. I don't have, nothing supposed to get an update as to where that stands in those internal conversations are. They also, I mean, the land access and the land control, site control is paramount. Without that, it's nothing moves forward, right? But that's being worked on internally with Duke. Obviously, they know we're down, so we're gonna do it if they will agree to it.
Is there a timeline that we like missed and have to wait for now, or we just like, right, so when is that?
June. So the interconnection deadline was June of this year. We made it into that one. It's June of next year as well. We can submit it anytime between January and June. So if we're ready to go, we can go ahead and submit, and at least, if we were to do that, we could at least start the conversation with their interconnection team, because we have an application on in the queue, so to speak. But until then, yeah, we have until basically that exact same deadline, 24.
At this time, are they gonna talk to you and let you know in advance if there's something else we need, rather than waiting until June and them telling us?
Yeah, that would be great. And we're trying to be a little more, you know, communicative with their team. I will say that thus far, Jennifer Bennett, who is the new representative to Jason Wall's place, has been really great.
She's trying really hard.
She is. She's trying really hard. She's trying to facilitate conversations internally with you, because we don't have that access, right? And so, it's going better this go around than it did last. The other piece of it though, outside of the site control, and again, ironically, Brownie and I had this exact conversation with their engineering team a month or two before we submitted our application was, hey, are there any of these line voltage regulators in between, where we're talking about doing this and our interconnect, because that sometimes will be a barrier that it puts out, is to have these line voltage regulators and say, well, it's in between your POI and your site, so
The big bucket looking things.
so, so magically, there is now going to be a line voltage regulator between those 2 points. So
Maybe someday,
maybe someday.
right, there is not one there today.
There's not one there.
But now that you asked, we might want to put one up.
That's kind
Isn't
of
it like
like how it felt. 200
yards away, POI.
It's not far, it's a half a mile. So that's not a showstopper. It might require some, creative engineering to get around that. There are alternatives and there are options. And so we've started working with the engineering team that we had originally done the site plan with. Say, okay, well, this is the barrier they put in front of us. How do we get around?
And that's with McEwen Creek?
Yeah.
Because the
But-
Duke,
We are very open to anybody else too. You had mentioned something specific.
yeah, so the Duke's position is that they don't want to see power generator, like an independent power generator interconnected on the outside of the line voltage regulator, right? Like you need to basically be between the line voltage regulator and the substation.
That's right.
Is their current requirement. So part of it is us confirming with them, like where exactly would you put it?
Yeah.
And then confirming that there is a route to place our point of interconnection in between that and the substation, which it looks like on the maps, like there are potential options to do it, but there could be like some utility easements that might need to be negotiated with some of the neighboring
That's right.
property owners, some of whom like are businesses we know and like maybe would be open to
That's right.
providing that,
One of them is
20
Duke.
20, one of them is Duke and the other is like Eaton, right?
Yeah.
So
These are folks
potentially
who know.
solvable
Yes.
issues.
Not
Yeah.
impenetrable barriers. I do not see this being like dead in the water. I think, few roadblocks, but we're going to continue to push together. So again, I'm hopefully getting an update here pretty quickly about where Duke is at with their internal discussions around site control part of it.
Yeah.
Because again, that's door number one. We got to get through that before we can do anything else. And the rest of it is just us working with our engineers to, develop this site plan based on our knowledge of the nebulous area that they'll put a line voltage regulator, and then the potential easement work that we might have to do with Eaton, and again, with Duke. But if I read the maps correctly, we literally running along existing power lines on Eaton's property anyway, so
It's not a very long
it's,
distance.
I just cannot imagine that that's much of a barrier. We know well and have worked with in a lot of other spaces, so I think we'll be okay.
But part of it may be like us having to sort of push Duke, like you're raising this as an issue. Let's assume everyone's working in good faith here, but like you need to identify exactly where it would be so that we can make decisions about being on the correct side of it, right? Because they've given us sort of a general vicinity, but it's
Yes.
not like this
Circling
exact
around it, yeah.
quality, right? So that's another thing we need from them, right?
Yeah, and I'm, again, I don't presume anyone has any nefarious goals here, but they weren't very specific. In the conversation I had with them, he pulled up a map and really was doing this with his mouse. In this general area here, that's not super helpful, but but it does give us at least some opportunity to know generally where it's going. And
You're lucky to
start
show
with
your map at all.
Yeah, it's funny, he actually said that. But that's kind of where we're at. It's good news.
I have another big question that's not on floating solar. I feel like we're at something just recently, and you or Amanda mentioned something around rebates in the development
development process, or?
Amanda was like,
Which rebates?
Yeah, we're now starting to look at environmental rebates in the development process.
I think you're maybe referring to economic development policy,
Okay.
incorporating some sustainability or clean energy components into that. That's
Great
that's like the sort of an idea that's being discussed.
okay,
Or
but
affordable housing?
But
Is that what Amanda was
we're
I'm
also
just kind of like, I like all these ideas, is this something we need to talk about it sometime, or is this going a different place, I don't know.
I mean, there's been some like very preliminary conversations about that.
Maybe more
Right.
politically than.
Where did that happen? I mean, I feel like we've had, like Tim Love was talking about some ideas along those lines,
Right.
right?
That was about affordable, I know what you're talking about. When I was, yes, so when we were down there on our advocacy days, when we were meeting with legislators, we talked about affordable housing. Tim and I were down there and we were talking about how if we had kind of the grant opportunities for infrastructure on affordable housing like we had for economic development, that'd be beneficial. And I sent you an email about that recently, so that may be, that's one thing.
Didn't at one of our commission briefings, Jeremiah, were you out there, didn't Tim talk about the idea of like doing some revisions to economic development incentives, which would include some like green, clean energy components?
Oh, I didn't remember the green energy.
And that's, where do we stand on that?
That's a Tim question.
It might be nice to bring to a future meeting, just to hear about it.
Yeah.
I can follow up.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we have to talk about both of those things.
Yeah, and then at our last affordable housing meeting, we talked about how there's a bunch of new grant programs and incentives for affordable housing developers.
At the state level, or that you're.
IRA,
That fell out of the IRA, that are new. And we also,
For renewables on them.
That's great.
yeah, so talk about maybe a
And efficiency.
family housing rooftop solar, one product that we offer developers similar to how we.
Like, this was 2 days ago, so.
You
like,
guys to build houses from your bond money?
That's what it's for.
Right, okay.
Even without the bond money, that was it.
Yeah, we just before the bond, we just use money.
But we're not actually building the homes, right? We're contracting with nonprofits to build them.
Yeah.
Right.
Just to be clear,
Right, but we have a lending.
But it's basically like a super.
We don't have a lending product. We have a tax.
we have a tax product.
So you guys
Yes.
lend.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. We do the gap financing.
Well, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund provides some loans too.
Yeah,
You're not. Okay,
that's like.
well, is there anything else for this?
I have one thing, just a reminder that no meeting in November, and instead December 1st, I believe, is our meeting time. So it's a combined
I see.
November, December meeting
Good
at the
point.
beginning of December,
Say that date again, please.
December 1st. Just make sure.
Alright.
Making it the last meeting of the year.
Got it.
Correct.
Oh, wow.
Got it.
That's insane. Okay.
And I think, we need to message, or note that with Lamar, because it's not our regular meeting time.
Yes.
Jack, you would do
Okay,
that.
so.
We're gonna need that.
What was this
The
on, so,
17th is canceled. First, it's replacement.
and this will go in?
December 1st, Friday.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This one, sorry, this is just-
Easy. Everything's just cute.
Okay, is there anything else? A motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Bye, Chris.
Hello.
Hey, Parker.